Hello, welcome back to Evil Genius Props. My name is Mike, and I'll be your Evil Genius for today. We're coming to you from the Undercroft today, and the project is to take a foam pool noodle and turn it into a tentacle from a squid, kraken, octopus, whatever, and turn it into a decoration for a tiki bar. And so what we're going to do is take that foam noodle and hopefully turn it into, by the end of the day, a very thirsty cephalopod. Let's go to the workbench and get started. All right, so first thing we need to figure out is just how long we're going to make this pool noodle arm here. Let's see if I can even fit this all onto the screen. So it looks like the full thing's about 4 feet long. And the idea is to have it sort of come out of a wall, curve up this way, and then this part's going to bend back and wrap around a mug. So roughly that. So try to figure out maybe how much I can cut off. I think maybe there, which is about 8 inches or so. So if this is going to be the side, that lets us get to about there. So try to make these be sort of some softer curves so they're not so sharp, because then you'll see you get this bend in the foam. And then I need to leave enough room on the end to have a curl around a mug. But I think that's a good length. If need be, we can trim it shorter as we go. What we cannot do is make it longer. But first things first, now that we've got it cut down, is I want to sort of angle out the arm a little bit. So thin this part out. I think I may have started a little far back on this piece. Because it's hollow, we're going to take some of the offcuts and fill that part in. So I'm not worried about that right now. So if I leave actually that cut open, I can use that to help wrap it around the mug. All right, so the next thing you may notice is that it doesn't want to stay particularly bent. So we'll cut that down. I got some galvanized wire. It's really cheap for as much as I got, 200 feet of 16 gauge wire. So I'm going to cut that into size and run some of those on the inside to help hold it all in place. So we're going to cut this a little bit longer than I need to, so that I have some extra to put through the base. So just going to straighten this out. Let's go ahead and cut a couple more of these while it's out before I get it in there, because I'm not getting in there very easily anyway, so let's take the time. I think we're going to do 3, probably more than I need. All right, we'll work on getting this straightened out and into the foam. All right, took some effort, but I got the wire through, and I'm going to bend it down this way to give me a nice point there so it doesn't fall away from me. But now with this in there, I should be able to bend this and have it stick in place. As mentioned, we're going to wrap this around a tiki mug. We'll get to that part later. So that part's going to be like that. We're going to bend this part down, and then around here we're going to bend it back up this way. There's a little bit of spring back happening, so we're going to overbend it. That's looking pretty good. I'd like it to maybe be a little bit tighter, but not too much. So I said I'm going to put a tiki mug in in its in its grip up there, and rather than using an actual ceramic tiki mug, when I was at the dollar store picking up the pool noodle, they had, actually it came with a lid and everything, a tiki mug. Now, obviously this is not a great tiki mug, but I can put that in its grip over here, and with some clever paint, it will look good enough. So we've got this. I'm actually very happy with the way this is curving. So I might mess with it a little bit more just to try to make that, but I'm happy with the overall outcome so far. Put that there, and you see I've got this wire sticking out here. The idea is we're going to punch that into the plastic to help hold it in place. But call this part good and move on. All right, so I cut a piece of 1/2-inch plywood, 10 inches, and I'm going to use the bottom of my trash can here actually as a guide to make the portal that this is going to go on. I'm going to cut out 2 circles, one to be the background, and then one to be the ring that goes on top of that. Now I'm going to cut these out on the bandsaw. So I did some quick testing, and I can just sort of spray the foam from the pool noodle just with some Plastidip, and then I can paint over that, which will help save me from having to do some of the other things I've seen other people do, which is paper mache or liquid latex. That all sounds good, but I already like the texture on it, but this way I can cover it with the Plastidip like I would with EVA foam and paint over that. So that's going to be our next step. Also, I have cut out 2 circles. We're going to cut out the other one with a router to do 2 layers, but then the tentacle is going to attach to one and then have this on the outside to look like a porthole. We'll probably print some bolt heads and glue those on. But there we go. Real quick before I go spray this, I'm going to just sand down some of the areas here where I cut it away. Just sort of, you can kind of see that there's these sort of flat areas I want to round out a little bit and smooth out some. All right, while the tentacle dries, totally normal thing to say, I'm going to take off this top. I think we'll just be able to do this with a knife. That didn't work. All right, see how well this goes. Just, there we go. Yeah, it's coming off real easy. Now it's got more of a mug top to it as opposed to this. Fortunately, getting it from a dollar store meant it's really thin plastic, so it cut really easily. But I'm going to basically put a hole through the side to put the wire through. But we'll get to that part later. All right, use my Paolini pocket rule here. Scribe that out an inch or so from the edge, and we will use that to be the guide for the router. So that will go there, right on top. We'll sand that all down, make it look pretty, but for right now,
it's a good fit.
All right, so I marked out where I should be able to put the wire through. I'm just going to drill out some holes so I'll be able to thread the wires from the pool noodle through those holes to trap them behind it. We're going to clean this up now and get ready for the next steps. All right, smooth it out. And I think we're going to clean that down, or glue that down, and then clamp it. And then be ready to move on. All right, we'll let that dry. All right, I let everything dry. I gave the base a quick and dirty base coat, which didn't really take all that well, but I'm not too worried about it. We're going to paint over all that anyway. I did end up putting some foam coat over the end of the tentacle where I had carved it, just to make it look a little bit nicer. It's probably going to get sanded down a little bit to take out some of the rough spots, but just sort of help cover that up, make it look less like foam. And while it was doing all of that, I cut on my laser cutter a bunch of rings to go on to be the tentacles. And that worked okay, but I'm not real happy with the ultimate result. So I made some little cups out of modeling foam, basically foam clay. Just made some to see how they looked, and they're a lot more irregular, a lot more organic looking, shall we say. So I think I'm just going to make a bunch more of these guys. I just rolled a little ball out of the clay and then sort of pushed it in and made almost like a little cup. So I think I'll make a bunch more of those, maybe use some of these guys, maybe like stack them or something so they're a little bit bigger, but even then they still don't quite look like suction cups. But make some more of these, and then once those are dried, attach them to our arm to sort of come in and be our suction cups on the tentacles. So that's where we are, and like I said, I'm going to make some more of these, and then next time you see me, we'll be attaching them onto this, and then do the whole thing with a second coat of Plastidip. All right, I also went through and put some primer on the Tiki mug here. So we're going to paint that while we let the suction cups on the tentacles dry. Trying to go with sort of a traditional, just generic Tiki mug look. So going with the solid color in, I think, just green. Green was a common one, brown, something like that, but I didn't quite want to do brown. It would look too much like wood, so I'm going to go with a green one. And then give it a gloss coat over that. All right, so this is the porthole cover that I printed off. I cut out of wood. This is the plywood. I printed these guys to be the bolt heads, but for some reason they're not actually bolt shaped. There's a somewhere along the line one of the measurements was wrong in I guess it was Tinkercad. So I went back in and redid them and reprinted them. I printed 10. Turns out most of the time dead lights, this is what this actually would be because it doesn't open, have 9. They basically are sort of set up in 3s as opposed to evenly. So I'm just going to set these out, work on positioning them. And try to get to something aesthetically pleasing. The nice thing is I'm not going to worry about making these all even and like straight. So it's like this one's a different orientation than this one. I'm fine with that because if it was actual bolts tightened down, that's kind of how they would be. I just sort of want to get them to a nice distance. Just go with the evenly spaced more or less. All right, we're going to leave those there. And I'm just going to go in and apply some super glue one at a time. Super glue isn't magic, but it's pretty close. It's a good one for sort of mixed materials like this that also I can do without having to worry about putting on a mask or a respirator or anything. Because the next step up from this is E6000. And that is very hard on the nose. So glue these guys down. Then we're going to paint the whole thing in brass and then go over that with some patina paint. And then do something in the center here. Common theme for this video. I'm going to let those dry and then come back and, like I said, paint over the outside here. So actually, while that glue is drying, I'm going to come in and do the inside part here. And what I'm actually going to do is do sort of a blue to black gradient. But even in the middle there, that's going to be covered up. So not to worry about the color there, but I'm going to start with like a lighter blue. Still pretty dark, but lighter blue on the outside, darker blue, black in the middle. Just using some acrylic paint, which it looks like we're going to need to do 2 coats of, but get that first one on at least. These little spots here are why I decided to do this before I did the brass. Once again, say it with me, we'll let that dry and then come back and do a second coat. All right, so by we'll let that dry means I'll get out the heat gun, but do that to come in and do the second coat here. It's starting to look much better now that we're actually getting some coverage on the wood here. So what I'm doing here is actually coming back in with some of the lighter blue and hitting right on that still wet edge. Try to get it to blend a little bit better rather than a hard line. Now I like the way that the brush strokes in there sort of actually give it a little bit of depth and movement to it, so it's not just concentric circles. So pleasant little bonus there. I didn't necessarily plan for that, but I like the way it turned out. Right, so we're going to go ahead and apply some of the brass paint, starting around on the sides. I'm not trying too hard to make this look like real metal. I would have cleaned up the sides a little bit more if I was. I'm okay with people realizing that the octopus tentacle coming through the porthole in somebody's basement bar isn't real. Alright, our brass paint is dry. This is way too new looking, so we're actually going to hit this with a couple of things. First, I'm going to cover up most of this actually with a patina, but I'm not going to make sure I do a great job covering everything. I just want to get the look of it. So if there's brass showing through or whatever, that's a bonus. Then once that dries, we're going to hit this with some washes to color, to tone it all down basically, because that's our patina paint. But I'm purposely trying to spread it out kind of thin here, so it's more covering up the brass than just being that color. And then, like I said, we'll hit all of this with some darker washes. So I'm actually, as I apply the paint, taking off a lot of it, not quite like dry brushing levels, where I take off most of it, but take off a lot of that paint rather than actually applying it. You can see here in places like this, there's still some of that brass showing through. That's the idea. All right, so this is on there, but it's way greener than we want. We want to age this up. So we're going to do some oil washes and start off just sort of splotching it on. We don't actually want to like brush. And you can sort of see it collecting there around the bolt heads. That's part of what we want. And then sort of pick that up. This is the burnt umber first. And then come over into one with the raw umber, which weirdly is darker. I think actually we're going to stop there. Now that green's toned down, there's a lot of grime around the edges there where there would be dirt collecting around the bolt heads. Sort of much more realistic looking aging than just the straight up patina paint. So here's a comparison. This is the patina paint on the side, and there it is on the top. All right, the cream spray paint's applied, mostly dry, kind of sticky for some reason. Next step is going to put some red on the upper side and sort of blend it down into the white down here. Because this is still black, it's actually going to come out as a darker red, so I'm kind of purposely going with a lighter red than I maybe like. And then if I want to do like a brighter red, I can do a second coat on top of that. Okay, I did go back and do a second coat on the red. One of the things that I did, though, is make sure to not cover it as thoroughly as I did the first coat, so that way there are still some variation in the color in there. So it's not just a solid red, but the thinner areas, you can still see some of the darker part through it. And I'm really happy with the way this is turning out. So our next step, we're going to gloss coat the whole thing, and that way it'll look wet and slimy, which is what we're going for here, really. And then after that, it's time to start putting everything together. Again, really happy with the way this turned out. This is maybe one of my favorite builds so far. All right, our gloss coat's all finished, and we're going to move on to assembly. I think that the next part here for assembly, the easiest thing is actually going to be attaching our mug next. So you can see that I left some of the cable, the wire coming out through here. And the idea is I'm going to drill a hole in the side of the Tiki mug here, run the wire through, sort of tie that off, maybe even trim some of it if it's longer, to hold that in place. So first things first, let's figure out where that's going to sit. Come down a little bit more. And then let's go ahead and mark a location and figure out where we're going to run those through, and then we're going to make a hole. So we'll go right about here. I assume you can't see that because I can't see that, but all right, so there's where we're going to put the hole. We don't want to go too big, but we also don't want to make it tiny either. So let's find our drill. Well, drill bits. Okay, if I do this, which is 3/16, I should be able to get these two through there. Right, that is so soft. Plastic. Let's get something underneath that, just for a little bit of support. Just need a piece of scrap wood or something. Okay, just a little piece of wood. All right, we're just gonna thread the wire in. Those both fit. Okay, curl it around. So what I'm doing on the inside is bending that wire in. So that's sort of holding it in place there. Kind of don't like that end. I might take a little bit of the extra here, and I can attach that onto it. But we'll get to that point. Our mug's attached. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I think what I might end up doing, though, in the future is actually get some spray foam. Just put a little bit of spray foam insulation in there. Can you see it all? Nope, because it's dark. All right. Get some spray foam insulation in there so it'll sort of fill up. That'll help keep the plastic mug a little more rigid and also cover up that those wires and keep them from going anywhere. But so far, so good. All right. Now, turn around to the other side. And let's work on straightening out these wires. because they're going to go through. I pre-drilled some holes on the board here. So we're going to just sort of figure out a way to wind those on through. And then we're going to trim them off and sort of wind them together on the other side. See how I pulled it all together. And the way we're doing this is just getting it into the hole and sliding it forward until the next one gets in there. Just need to sort of slowly, because these aren't all straight and we don't want to lose them. I'm going to try a different angle. All right, so we're just going to wind these in there and sort of slide this on. The challenge here is to not just pull on the wires and slide them through, because then it'll pull from the other side. So we need to sort of slide it all on this way without actually moving anything back. So what I'm going to do now is take these wires that are sort of sticking out through the end and just sort of try and twist these together. All right, so there's a lot of extra here, so I'm going to trim this back and then just sort of squeeze it on down. And then that's going to end up sticking out the back, but we'll put some eye hooks and some picture wire on the back to help hold it all up. It's on there, but I want to get it a little bit tighter because it's bending. I'm going to pick it up. So I'll deal with that. It's going to be probably just some hot glue to hold it down in place. Here's where we are. The wires by itself was not enough to hold the tentacle to the backboard here. It would hold on there, but it would droop off. So there'd be a gap at the top. Instead of holding the mug up, it would be sort of hanging down low. So took a pause and just tried to figure out what else we could do. So what I'm going to do is the hole is basically 3/4 of an inch with just a little bit of wiggle room, which is perfect for our 16 gauge wire. So I'm going to already drill a hole in this, drilled a hole in that. We're going to put the dowel there, mount this on the dowel with the wire still going through the back, so the wires are still going to be part of it. Coat this and also the base of the tentacle that's going to be attached with some Gorilla Glue, and basically hope all of that's enough to hold it up in place. I did, because I'm working with a foam I don't normally work with. I don't usually work with sort of the pool noodle open cell. I'm not sure if this is open cell or closed cell. This type of foam, I wanted to make sure that the glue would be safe for it. It wouldn't eat it and would also hold. And as you can see, it's holding pretty well. Didn't rip out, didn't melt anything. So we'll go ahead and call that a success. Also, just to be sure, I tested super glue, which doesn't hold nearly as well. So first things first is going to be attaching the dowel to our backboard here. Here's where things get tricky, because I don't want to have the glue drying while I'm trying to get the wires through, but I also want to be able to get as much of this covered as I can. So the question is, do I first start to get the wires in, or do I put some glue on, then try to work the wires through? All right, and one of the pre-drilled holes is covered up, so we're going to do a new hole real quick. So what we're going to do to make this nice and straight, mark where that hole should be. All right, so that didn't seem too bad to actually try to get it to squeeze in there, to fit through there. So we'll go ahead and put some on here. Kind of putting a lot on the top because it's going to push down as it goes through. Once I get it started, I'll put some more on and also put some directly on the foam on the bottom here. Where's my squirt bottle? Here's my squirt bottle. This is kind of hard to position so you can actually see it. I'm going to stop right about there. Put some glue on this part and also around on the bottom of the foam. We'll let that dry and come back to it.
Here we are, final shots. In situ in a real tiki bar. Okay, my tiki bar, that's fine.